Also, kind of transition here just a little bit and talk about listening prayer. I think it's very important for us to realize that, prayer is not making a speech. It's supposed to be conversational intimacy with God. But oftentimes, in the more public, especially in public prayer, it's all about the speech, right? I mean, how many times have you heard people just read prayers? What good is a read prayer going to be in God's sight? It's probably not much, right? So the whole idea is that when we pray in conversational intimacy, the most important aspect of that prayer is actually when we finish saying what we have to say, listening to what God has to say. And that's the part I think that's missing from the prayer life of many Christians, is that we pray, and especially interventional prayer, we ask for intervention focused on the problem and not on the problem solver, and we kind of lose focus on what we're actually what we're praying for. In 1 John 5:14 it says, "This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He will hear us. And if He hears us, He will respond if we're paying attention and if we're listening." Now, He may not respond in the timing, and He may not respond in the way that we have a desire for, but He will respond, okay, as long as we're praying according to His will. And very importantly is we have to be prepared for this tender, still, small voice, that whisper that we hear from God. Some people say they hear it in their mind. Some people they feel it in their soul. Some people actually say they actually hear the words. Okay, we'll talk more about that in a minute. But regardless of how you define the still small voice, that's what we're listening for. Okay, I never forget the first time that I heard what I felt like really heard the still small voice. We were at a Doylestown Band of Brothers retreat at one of the brothers' in-laws retreat space at Tweedy Ranch, and we had 1 hour of quiet time. Rob's always basically that's been kind of a mainstay of our ministry from the very beginning. And so I was out at quiet time, and this is a fairly good sized place, so you've got a lot of places to roam, a lot of privacy. And I had always been told, if you really want to connect with God in intimacy, walk with Him and talk to Him out loud. And so for the very first time, I did that. I walked down the road, I got to where I looked around to make sure there were no other guys anywhere. Okay? Yeah, right. I wanted to test this thing, but I didn't want to test it in front of any of my brothers, right? Okay? So I walk down the road, and I find myself in a space where I can see there are a few people, but they're like, several hundred yards away, so they won't be able to hear me. And I begin to pray out loud. And that was the first time I'd ever done that. And as I got into that prayer, I began to realize that I was making a connection like I had never, ever made before. So if you have not experienced that, if you've never prayed out loud in privacy, and I'd say I'm a mountain person, so I love going to the mountains. I love the crisp, clean air, and when I pray out loud, and I did this morning, when we went on that, I spent 30 minutes just walking around. Now, a couple of people looked at me kind of funny, but I prayed out loud and just poured my heart out to God. Okay? And I am very confident that I heard His return. And then I listened. And I'm very confident that I have some answers that I did not have before that. Okay? So that's listening prayer. And again, this is not a speech we're making. This is a conversation. Have a conversation with Him the same way you would have a conversation with your best friend. Because, by the way, He is.